Rise, my apprentice.
Our story begins on Coruscant, where Darth Sidious, deep within the darkened halls of his private quarters, felt the subtle disturbance in the Force. Having just sent Darth Maul to Tatooine to deal with the Jedi, he sought the quiet of his sanctuary to meditate on the unfolding events. As he closed his eyes, his mind was drawn into a vivid and unexpected vision. In this vision, Sidious saw a boy, young, innocent, and powerful beyond measure, living in the far reaches of the galaxy on the desert planet of Tatooine. The boy was born without a father. The Force swirled around this child, marking him as something extraordinary. Sidious recognized the power emanating from the boy, raw and untamed, like a storm waiting to be unleashed. The vision showed the boy standing among Jedi, the chosen one of their prophecies, leading them to victory. Sidious watched in horror as the boy grew into a man destined to destroy the Sith, bringing balance to the Force by their annihilation. Palpatine couldn't allow this boy to become what he saw in his vision. The chosen one, an instrument of the Jedi, would be the end of the Sith, the destruction of everything Sidious had worked for. There was no other option. The boy had to be captured and raised under the guidance of the dark side. Otherwise, all that he had built, all the schemes he had woven throughout the Republic, would be undone in an instant. As Palpatine pondered his next steps, a troubling thought gnawed at the back of his mind. The power that radiated from the boy, Anakin Skywalker, was unlike anything he had ever felt before. Even in his vision, the raw potential Anakin possessed was immense, far greater than even his own. Could this truly be possible? Could a mere child, untrained and unaware, hold the key to powers beyond his reach? Doubt crept into the Sith Lord's mind. For all his ambition and cunning, Palpatine knew that the Sith had always operated under one fundamental law. There could only be two, master and apprentice, the strong leading the strong. But what if this boy, this chosen one, was not meant to serve but to replace him? Was he, by seeking to bring Anakin into his fold, simply inviting his eventual successor? The thought was almost unbearable. Perhaps the risk was too great. Perhaps the vision was not a warning to claim the boy, but to eliminate him. Now, while the boy was still unaware of his power and vulnerable, if he allowed Anakin to grow, even under his guidance, what guarantee was there that the boy would remain loyal? What guarantee was there that Anakin would not one day rise up and overthrow him, as was the way of the Sith? For a fleeting moment, Palpatine considered the possibility of ending the threat before it could ever become real. A quick death, silent and unseen, would ensure the survival of the Sith. The boy would never know his destiny, and Sidious would remain unchallenged in his rule. But the vision returned to him, vivid and relentless. The power of the boy was undeniable, and to squander such potential, to destroy a being who could become the most powerful Sith in history, was it not a waste? The temptation to control that power was intoxicating, far outweighing the fear of the boy's future rebellion. Palpatine, still unsettled by the implications of his vision, sought the wisdom of his master. In the shadowed confines of their hidden sanctum, Sidious relayed every detail: the boy, Anakin Skywalker, his immense power, and the threat he posed to the Sith. He spoke of his own doubts, of whether they should claim the boy or destroy him before his destiny could unfold. Plagueis, the master of life and death, listened intently, his expression unreadable. The idea of a child powerful enough to either save or destroy the Sith was deeply troubling, even to him. As he absorbed Palpatine's fears, another thought began to take root in his mind. Was this child a consequence of their manipulations of the Force? Could this be the Force itself, striking back at them for daring to bend its will? Plagueis considered these possibilities. The fear in Palpatine's voice was reasonable, but fear had never been a stranger to the Sith. Power and ambition were always accompanied by risk, and this child represented the ultimate gamble. Plagueis leaned back, eyes narrowing as he spoke.
The boy is dangerous, yes,
Plagueis began, his voice cold and calculating.
but in my mind, he is destined to destroy either the Sith or the Jedi. Whoever claims him first will determine the outcome. This is a game of survival, and we cannot afford to let the Jedi have him.
He paused, allowing his words to sink in.
Could the boy eventually turn on us? Yes, but this is the way of the Sith. The rule of two has brought us to this point of strength. It is through betrayal and ascension that we grow stronger. If this child is the key to bringing down the Jedi once and for all, then so be it.
Plagueis' reasoning was as sharp as ever. The path of the Sith was not one of safety, but of calculated risk. If Anakin Skywalker was the final piece needed to destroy the Jedi, then he must be claimed, even if it meant inviting the possibility of betrayal in the future. Palpatine considered his master's words, feeling the weight of the decision before him. There was no turning back now. They would claim the boy, knowing full well that he could one day challenge them. But if they played their cards right, the Jedi would fall, and the Sith would finally reign supreme. Despite Darth Maul's mission to confront the Jedi on Tatooine, Palpatine knew this situation required a more delicate touch. If this boy, Anakin Skywalker, was truly the one from his vision, his fate could not be left in the hands of his apprentice. Maul was a weapon, a blunt instrument honed for destruction, but this situation demanded precision and manipulation. Palpatine understood the gravity of the situation. The Jedi, particularly Master Qui-Gon Jinn, were already on Tatooine, and Maul's brute force alone might not be enough to capture the boy. If the Jedi learned of the boy's importance, they would shield him, taking him under their protection. The Sith's carefully laid plans would be shattered before they could fully take shape. There was no other option. Palpatine would have to go to Tatooine himself. If Anakin was who he believed him to be, the Sith Lord could not risk failure, not at the hands of Maul or any other. As Palpatine's shuttle touched down on the barren sands of Tatooine, his communicator buzzed with a message from Darth Maul. The Jedi were preparing to leave the planet. Palpatine's eyes narrowed. The time had come to act. With cold precision, he ordered Maul to kidnap the boy, Anakin Skywalker, and leave the Jedi for him. This would be the moment Palpatine set his plans into motion. Far from the shadows, Maul raced through the desert on a speeder, his piercing gaze locked on the target. Qui-Gon Jinn and Anakin were moving quickly toward their ship, the boy unaware of the danger speeding toward him. In an instant, Maul made his move, veering the speeder directly toward them, snatching Anakin and speeding off into the distance before Qui-Gon could react. A surge of panic shot through Qui-Gon as he watched helplessly. The boy, their chosen one, was now in the hands of the enemy. He broke into a sprint toward the ship, intent on following them, but was cut off by a figure emerging from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, radiating malice. It was Darth Sidious, and with him came a darkness Qui-Gon had never felt before. Sidious relished the fear he sensed from the Jedi Master. It was intoxicating, the anticipation of this moment when he could finally reveal himself. Smiling coldly, Sidious ignited his lightsaber, its crimson blade casting an eerie glow in the desert dusk. This was not just a fight for survival, it was the unveiling of the Sith's return. Without hesitation, Qui-Gon ignited his own lightsaber, knowing full well the danger he faced. But as their blades clashed, it became clear. Sidious was in control from the very first strike. The Sith Lord toyed with Qui-Gon, prolonging the battle, reveling in the thrill of each exchange. Every parry, every strike was perfectly measured, calculated to draw out the Jedi's fear. Qui-Gon fought valiantly, his skills honed through years of experience, but Sidious was toying with him. As the fight dragged on, Qui-Gon realized the urgency of the situation. He had to act, and fast.
Obi-Wan!
He shouted toward the ship.
Leave! Find the boy!
In that moment, Sidious landed the killing blow to Qui-Gon, impaling him in the chest. Obi-Wan, torn between helping his master and following his last command, made the difficult choice. He began setting course to pursue Maul and Anakin, knowing it was what Qui-Gon would have wanted. But before he could even lift off, Palpatine's presence swept through the air like a storm, gripping the ship in the invisible clutches of the Force. Laughing, Sidious turned his attention from Qui-Gon's lifeless body to the ship, where Obi-Wan desperately tried to free them from his grasp. The Sith Lord reveled in the power he displayed.
This is the true nature of the Force.
With a flick of his hand, Sidious unleashed a torrent of Force lightning, engulfing the ship in a storm of destruction. The energy coursed through its frame, shattering metal and circuitry in an instant. The ship exploded in a blinding flash of light, killing all aboard, including Queen Amidala and the crew. There would be no survivors, no witnesses left to speak of Sidious's presence on Tatooine. The Republic was thrown into disarray upon hearing the news of Queen Amidala's death. Already strained by the tensions surrounding the Trade Federation's blockade of Naboo, the Queen's demise was seen by many as an act of war. Outrage spread across the Senate floor, with some demanding swift action, convinced that this attack was orchestrated by the Trade Federation to suppress Naboo's defiance. Yet despite the fervor and calls for justice, Chancellor Valorum found himself immobilized. The bureaucrats, many of whom had ties to the Trade Federation, stalled every attempt to push for decisive action. Valorum, already seen as weak by his peers, was unable to gather the support necessary to mobilize the Republic's forces. The political stalemate left Naboo defenseless and the Republic paralyzed. Palpatine, ever the opportunist, seized this moment to make his move. Calmly, but with a calculated edge, he addressed the Senate, suggesting that perhaps the current leadership was no longer capable of handling such dire crises. He proposed a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum, planting the seeds of his own rise to power. The Senate, eager for decisive leadership, quickly turned against Valorum, and a vote was scheduled. With his political strategy in motion, Palpatine retreated to his private quarters later that evening, where he met with his master, Darth Plagueis. The celebration was quiet but potent, with Palpatine subtly pushing Plagueis into a state of drunkenness. The two shared their satisfaction at how events were unfolding, but Palpatine's mind was already on the next step. As Plagueis reveled in their growing power, Palpatine made his final move. With ruthless efficiency, he struck, cutting down his master in the dead of night. Darth Plagueis, master of life and death, was too intoxicated to defend himself as the betrayal came swift and final. With his death, Palpatine claimed the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith, officially ascending to the rank of Sith Master. The rule of two had been fulfilled once more. Darth Maul, still alive, could have easily stepped into the role of Palpatine's apprentice, but Sidious had other plans. Maul was a weapon, a force of destruction, but not the one destined to stand at his side as Sith apprentice. Instead, Palpatine had been in secret communication with Dooku, the fallen Jedi who had grown disillusioned with the Republic and the Jedi Order. Sidious had named Dooku as his new apprentice, Darth Tyrannus. Maul's exclusion from his rightful position fueled a deep, seething hatred within him. He had long believed that he would be Sidious's true apprentice, and this perceived betrayal only intensified his rage. Sidious, however, relished this. Maul's anger made him a perfect weapon, an unleashed force of chaos that could be directed against the enemies of the Sith. Maul would remain a Sith acolyte, an instrument of destruction, but not the heir to Sidious's power. The ultimate apprentice, the one who would secure the Sith's future, was none other than the boy Maul had kidnapped. Anakin Skywalker. Sidious's vision was clear. Anakin was destined to become far more than a mere weapon. He would be the key to bringing down the Jedi and cementing the Sith's rule across the galaxy. Palpatine, now the Chancellor of the Republic, orchestrated a masterstroke in his manipulation of Anakin Skywalker. Darth Maul, who had held the boy prisoner on the volcanic planet of Mustafar for years, was still under the impression that he was doing his master's bidding, but Palpatine had a different plan in mind. He would stage a daring rescue of Anakin, casting himself as the hero in the boy's eyes and bearing any suspicion of his role in orchestrating the entire situation. When Palpatine's forces arrived on Mustafar, they stormed Maul's hideout and rescued the boy from captivity. Anakin, still young and impressionable, saw Palpatine not as the mastermind behind his kidnapping, but as his savior. Grateful and eager to repay this apparent act of heroism, Anakin looked up to Palpatine as a mentor and father figure. Little did he know, Palpatine had already set him on a path of darkness, far from the teachings of the Jedi. Over the next 10 years, Palpatine began to mold Anakin in secret. The first step was shaping the boy's mind. He educated Anakin in the subtle art of politics, teaching him how to navigate the treacherous currents of the Republic's leadership. Anakin learned how to speak with authority, how to win over allies, and how to present himself with the poise and control of a leader. But beneath this political education lay something far more sinister. As their private lessons continued, Palpatine gradually introduced Anakin to the deeper mysteries of the Force. He showed the boy how to use the Force not just for physical power, but to bend the will of others, subtly influencing those around him to act in his favor. Anakin's training in the dark side was slow and methodical, a seed planted that would eventually bloom into something much darker. Palpatine was careful, ensuring that Anakin's hatred and anger were nurtured over time. He whispered to him about how unfair life had been, how the galaxy was unjust, and how true power came from taking control. For Anakin, these teachings resonated deeply, and as he grew stronger in the Force, so did his loyalty to Palpatine. He was becoming the apprentice Palpatine had always dreamed of, built on anger, resentment, and hatred. It was during this time that Palpatine issued one of his most devastating orders to Darth Maul. Knowing that Anakin's connection to his mother, Shmi Skywalker, was still a powerful source of his emotional turmoil, Palpatine commanded Maul to kill her. Maul, already seething with rage over his position as a mere acolyte, carried out the order without hesitation. The news of his mother's death hit Anakin like a storm. His grief was quickly replaced by a singular hatred, a hatred directed at Maul. In Anakin's mind, Maul had already been the cause of his suffering, the one who kidnapped him from Qui-Gon Jinn, the Jedi who had promised to free him and train him as a Jedi. Now Maul had taken away the one person Anakin had longed to save, his mother. This hatred, carefully stoked by Palpatine, became the core of Anakin's power. Every lesson, every piece of knowledge Palpatine imparted was now filtered through the lens of this burning anger. Anakin's transformation into the perfect Sith apprentice was nearly complete. His hatred for Maul, the fuel that powered his growing mastery of the dark side. The time had come for Anakin's true true test. Palpatine, ever the puppet master, had orchestrated a confrontation between Anakin and his two rivals, Darth Maul and Count Dooku. This was not just a test of Anakin's strength, but a moment of reckoning. Maul, fueled by years of jealousy and rage, and Dooku, a former Jedi with mastery in both the Force and lightsaber combat, stood as formidable opponents. But Palpatine knew that Anakin was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Anakin, now a fully trained Sith warrior, had grown into a force of nature. His mastery of all 7 forms of lightsaber combat made him unmatched in battle, but it was his connection to the Force that made him truly unstoppable. Palpatine had taught him not just how to wield the dark side, but how to manipulate it, bend it to his will. His mind was sharp, his power in the Force unmatched. As Anakin faced Maul and Dooku, the battle was fierce, but it was clear from the start that Anakin was beyond them. His speed, strength, and precision left them no chance. Maul, blinded by rage, was the first to fall, Anakin's blade cleaving through him with ease. Dooku, more calculated and measured, held out longer, but even his mastery of the Force and years of experience as a duelist were no match for Anakin's raw power. With a final decisive strike, Anakin ended Dooku's life. In that moment, Anakin became Palpatine's true apprentice. The Sith Lord had succeeded in creating the ultimate weapon, a being of unparalleled strength and loyalty. Anakin had proven himself stronger than any Sith or Jedi before him, his connection to the dark side far deeper than Palpatine had ever dared to imagine. With the Clone Wars erupting across the galaxy, Anakin took command of the Separatist forces, leading them as a Sith warrior. His strength and tactical brilliance brought devastation wherever he went, and his loyalty to Palpatine never wavered. Anakin crushed Republic forces time and time again, his mere presence on the battlefield enough to turn the tide of battle in favor of the Separatists. What made him even more terrifying to the Jedi was his ability to hunt them down. Anakin, with his intimate knowledge of Jedi tactics and his unparalleled combat skills, cut through Jedi like no other. Entire legions of Jedi fell to him, and with each victory, the galaxy grew darker under his command. Palpatine had crafted a Sith apprentice beyond his wildest dreams. Anakin was stronger than any Sith before him, his power growing with each battle, and yet his attachment to Palpatine, whom he saw as a father figure, kept him loyal. Despite the Sith tradition of betrayal, Anakin never considered turning against his master. He had been molded to see Palpatine as the one constant in his life, the man who had saved him and given him power. But as time went on, the cracks in Palpatine's plan began to show. Anakin stumbled upon a recording that would shatter everything he believed. In the footage, Palpatine and Darth Plagueis discussed their grand designs, how they had manipulated the Force to create Anakin as part of their larger plan to destroy the Jedi and bring the Sith to ultimate power. Anakin watched in stunned silence as the truth unfolded before him. The life he had led, the very circumstances of his birth, had all been engineered by Palpatine, the man he had looked up to as a father, the man who had molded him into the powerful warrior he had become, had been pulling the strings from the very beginning. Fury, unlike anything Anakin had ever felt, surged through him. His life had been a lie, a carefully constructed manipulation by the very man he had sworn loyalty to. Now steeped fully in the dark side, Anakin's rage consumed him, and the Sith tradition of betrayal loomed ever closer. The rule of the Sith was clear. There could only be two, and now Palpatine's worst fears would be realized. The apprentice was ready to challenge the master. Anakin stood in the shadow chamber of the Sith Citadel, his mind a storm of fury and betrayal. The walls, once symbols of his loyalty, now felt like a prison built from lies. The man who had nurtured him, guided him, shaped him into the warrior he was, had manipulated his very existence. Palpatine had to pay for this. Anakin felt Palpatine's presence before he even saw him. The dark energy of the Sith Lord seemed to press down on the room like an oppressive fog. As the door slid open, Palpatine entered, calm as ever, draped in the dark robes of his office. His eyes, glowing with malevolent yellow light, studied Anakin.
I know what you've seen, but understand, my boy, everything I did was for you, for us. Together we will bring true order to the galaxy.
Anakin's hand instinctively went to his lightsaber, the fury bubbling up from within.
You've lied to me. My whole life has been a lie. You used me, all of this, for your power.
His words were sharp, laced with the anger of 1,000 battles. The room crackled with the tension of the dark side. Palpatine sighed, his calm exterior never wavering.
And yet, without me, you are nothing. Everything you've learned, everything you've become, is because of me. You are the chosen one, Anakin. But only with me can you fulfill your true destiny.
Anakin ignited his lightsaber, the red blade humming to life, cutting through the shadows. His heart raced with the fury of betrayal, but his mind was focused, clear.
I don't need you. I will destroy you, as I should have long ago.
Palpatine's lip curled into a smile, his own crimson blade extending with a sharp hiss.
You've grown strong, my apprentice, but not strong enough.
With a sudden, vicious clash, the duel began. Anakin charged forward, his blade moving with lightning speed, fueled by the raw hatred surging through him. Palpatine met the assault with equal ferocity, his movements elegant, precise. Their blades clashed with a sound that echoed through the chamber, filling the air with the heat of their strikes. Anakin was relentless, pressing the attack, his strikes fueled by years of pent-up rage. He wielded his lightsaber with a mastery that surpassed even the greatest Jedi and Sith, the forms of combat he had perfected flowing into one another seamlessly. Each swing was intended to end Palpatine's life, to put an end to the years of deception, but Palpatine was no easy target. The Sith Lord danced around Anakin's attacks with an almost effortless grace, using the full extent of his dark powers. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a wave of force lightning crashing toward Anakin. Anakin absorbed it into his blade, redirecting the energy with a furious swipe.
You were never meant to rule, Anakin.
Palpatine taunted, sending another barrage of lightning.
Only through me can you achieve your potential.
Anakin deflected the lightning, the sparks flashing off his blade, illuminating his face twisted with rage.
I'll show you my true potential.
With a roar, Anakin surged forward, shifting his form mid-attack, using a combination of Ataru's acrobatics and Gemso's sheer strength. His strikes became more aggressive, battering through Palpatine's defenses, forcing the Sith Lord to take a step back. Palpatine countered, thrusting his blade toward Anakin's chest, but Anakin's reflexes were faster than ever. He sidestepped the attack and brought his blade down in a powerful arc, nearly breaking Palpatine's guard. Palpatine's face darkened, his eyes burning with fury. He lashed out with the Force, sending Anakin flying across the room, slamming him into a pillar. But Anakin was on his feet again in an instant, the dark side fueling his body. He reached out, gripping Palpatine with the Force and hurling him into the opposite wall. The two clashed again, their blades locked in a deadly dance. As the duel raged on, Anakin's power became undeniable. His movements were a whirlwind of fury and precision, and for the first time, Palpatine felt himself being pushed to his limits. Anakin's strength was beyond anything Palpatine had anticipated. With each passing moment, the apprentice was proving stronger than the master. Palpatine's face contorted in rage as he unleashed a torrent of dark energy, lightning arcing from his fingertips, enveloping the room in an explosion of raw power. Anakin's body convulsed as the energy coursed through him, but instead of faltering, he channeled the pain into more power. His eyes blazed with fury as he pushed through the storm of lightning, step by agonizing step.
You will fall!
Anakin growled through clenched teeth. With one final burst of strength, Anakin leaped forward, his lightsaber raised high. Palpatine, caught off guard by Anakin's sheer willpower, brought his blade up to block, but it was too late. Anakin's strike was fueled by the full force of his anger, his hatred, his betrayal. Their blades clashed, but Anakin's power overwhelmed Palpatine, and with a sharp, final thrust, Anakin drove his lightsaber through Palpatine's chest. Palpatine gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief as he looked down at the blade protruding from his body. The dark energy that had once pulsed through him now flickered and faded. Anakin pulled his lightsaber free, and Palpatine collapsed to the ground, his lifeless body crumpling at Anakin's feet. Breathing heavily, Anakin stood over his fallen master, the weight of what had just happened slowly settling in. The dark side swirled around him, but instead of being consumed by it, Anakin felt something else, a sense of liberation. The man who had controlled his life, manipulated his every move, was finally gone. The rule of the Sith had changed. Anakin Skywalker, no longer an apprentice, had become the master. With Palpatine dead at his hands, Anakin Skywalker now stood as the sole leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. No longer shackled by the manipulations of his former master, he unleashed the full might of the CIS upon the crumbling Republic. The galaxy, already ravaged by years of war, now faced the sheer overwhelming force of Anakin's command. The Republic, once a beacon of unity and strength, had been left in chaos following the sudden death of Palpatine. The Senate was leaderless, torn apart by factions, and struggling to respond to the rapidly shifting tide of war. Even if they could gather their forces, the production of clone troopers could never match the CIS war machine. Droid factories across countless systems operated at full capacity, churning out endless waves of battle droids. In contrast, the Republic's dwindling resources made their attempts to regroup futile. Anakin, now wielding both military genius and unmatched power in the Force, led led the CIS forces with terrifying precision. His tactical brilliance, honed by years of training in battle, allowed him to exploit every weakness in the Republic's defenses. With every battle, the Republic fell further into disarray. Jedi generals were hunted down and destroyed, their resistance crushed under Anakin's relentless command. The war raged on, but it was clear that the tide had permanently shifted in favor of the CIS. Planets that once stood proudly with the Republic fell one by one, their defenses crumbling before the overwhelming might of Anakin's forces. In the final days of the conflict, Anakin brought his full force to bear on Coruscant, the capital of the Republic. The skies above the city planet burned as the CIS fleet descended, and the last remnants of the Republic's leadership attempted to make a desperate stand, but it was no use. Anakin's power had grown beyond measure. With cold efficiency, he led the CIS armies in the invasion of Coruscant, cutting through the final defenders and personally leading the assault on the Senate. The Republic, which had once spanned the galaxy, was no more. As he stood in the ruins of the Senate chambers, surrounded by the fallen symbols of the old Republic, Anakin saw the opportunity to reshape the galaxy. The war had brought devastation, but now there was a chance for true order. With both the CIS and the Republic in his grasp, Anakin declared the end of the war and the birth of a new era. Anakin restructured both the Republic and the Confederacy, merging them into a single entity, the First Galactic Empire. It would be an empire ruled by strength, where chaos and division would no longer be tolerated. The Senate, weakened and broken, had no choice but to submit to Anakin's will. Those who resisted were swiftly eliminated, and those who remained quickly fell in line. Anakin stood before the galaxy, not as the leader of the CIS, but as the new Emperor. His reign was built on power, order, and absolute control. The Jedi, the Republic, and the old systems had all fallen, replaced by the Empire's iron grip. Anakin Skywalker, now Emperor of the Galaxy, had not forgotten the secrets he had uncovered during his rise to power. Palpatine's full plan, including the inhibitor chips implanted in the clone troopers, had been laid bare to him. The Sith Lord had intended to use these chips to eliminate the Jedi through Order 66. Now, that plan would serve Anakin's own purpose. With the Republic defeated and the Jedi already weakened, Anakin issued Order 66. The clone armies, still loyal to their programming, turned on the Jedi. At the same time, Anakin unleashed the droid armies of the CIS, pitting the two unstoppable forces against what little remained of the Jedi Order. The Jedi, once the galaxy's guardians of peace and justice, were hunted down and destroyed. Betrayed by the very soldiers they had commanded, the Jedi were eliminated to the point of near extinction. The galaxy watched as the final vestiges of Jedi resistance were wiped from existence. Anakin, the Sith Emperor, had ensured that no one would challenge his rule. The Jedi, who had once stood against the darkness, were nothing but a memory, a myth whispered in the shadows of the Empire. Years passed and Anakin's reign continued unchallenged. His strength, both in the Force and in his command of the galaxy, was unmatched. The Empire thrived under his rule, and the galaxy, though governed by fear, was united. Anakin had fulfilled the Sith dream of absolute dominance, but as time wore on, he grew older. He knew that the Sith way demanded a successor, one who could carry on the legacy of the dark side and the Empire. In his search for an apprentice, Anakin sought not just strength, but someone worthy of his power and vision. He found that apprentice in a young warrior with incredible potential. The boy had a raw connection to the Force, much like Anakin had once possessed. Anakin took the boy under his wing, molding him as Palpatine had once done for him. But this time, Anakin did not make the same mistakes. He kept his apprentice close, shaping his mind, power, and loyalty. The galaxy would soon know this apprentice by a new name, Starkiller. Trained in the ways of the dark side, Starkiller became a force of devastation, carrying out Anakin's will with terrifying efficiency. He was a weapon of the Empire, forged in the fires of Anakin's experience and ambition. As Anakin's twilight years approached, he looked upon his empire with a sense of satisfaction. The Sith had prevailed, the galaxy was his, and a worthy successor stood ready to take his place. The legacy of the Sith would endure, and the galaxy would remain under their rule for generations to come. Anakin Skywalker, once the Chosen One, had fulfilled his destiny, not as a Jedi, but as the Emperor who reshaped the galaxy in his image.